Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast, where we look at the Second Amendment just burning to the ground. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Welcome back. Another edition of the Right Guys podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling. Max, I know I said that, but it just doesn't feel like they're taking their civil rights as just crumpling them up, throwing on an ash heap, and then just setting them to fire and be damned with all of the established gun laws since the turn of the century that were in place. You know, it feels like I'm being hunted down just because I exercise my rights. You know,
Yeah,
it's just disgusting.
yeah. No, if it feels like that, it should, because I mean, you live in Colorado, so you are experiencing that firsthand. I lived through that. I grew up in New Jersey. Kind of graduate colleges, realized, hey, time for me to own a gun, bought a gun, and immediately became an enemy of the state in New Jersey.
All right.
So I'm like, all right, well, let's see where I can move to Colorado. And now I'd moved to Texas, and now I see what's happening in Colorado. And it's just such a shame because it's not that dissimilar from what's happened in other states. And there are a lot of cases that are moving through the appellate courts. Like for years, gun rights organizations have challenged gun bans in Maryland, in New Jersey, in New York, and they just ran up against a brick wall, right? And then so the Supreme Court in Heller and Bruin and McDonald kind of opened the door for us to claw back our rights, get our rights back. And it's remarkable to see the level of disdain that these judges on the East Coast and these blue states have for the Second Amendment, but also the disdain for purple states like Colorado, how rather than waiting to see how it all shapes up, these active court cases before the Supreme Court, they're just going to dive headfirst into this issue. Like there are cases before the Supreme Court right now that if the Supreme Court agrees to hear them, will decide one way or another whether states are allowed to ban so-called assault weapons. So you would think they'd show a little bit of care and say, okay, well, let's table this and wait to see what the Supreme Court says, rather than risk violating their citizens' rights in the meantime. But we know better than that. We know that they're not actually worried about the consequences of violating our rights.
No,
we know that.
No. I mean, this is the state where Jenna Griswold tried to get Donald Trump removed from the ballot. So let's not forget that this is not just California light anymore. This is full-on liberal super Colorado now. And that's where you live. That's what you're dealing with. It's
for sure.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Absolutely, for sure. And I feel bad when I do this, but I want to know what you're in for. Colorado recently banned or tried to ban, I think there's still an avenue, but you have to jump through some hoops, making your own firearm at home. Something that's been legal since before the American founding. Something that's legal at the federal level. I want to show you what you're in for if the Supreme Court doesn't step in and put a stop to this madness. This is a case out of New York City. The gentleman's name is Dexter Taylor, and he was just convicted of gunsmithing in his house. And the judge in that case scolded his defense attorney and told him not to make a Second Amendment argument because, quote, the Second Amendment doesn't exist in this courtroom, end quote. That's a quote. That's not an exaggeration.
Wow, I didn't know rights ended at the bottom, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Let me make sure I get her name. I don't want to get it wrong. Where is it? Darka. Judge. Let me see. Where's her first name?
So what was this guy doing? He was just making guns? Like just a hobbyist?
Yeah, so he figured out you can do it. Judge Abina Darka. This is what she looks like. Listen, I don't like to judge a book by its cover, but if you put a lineup of judges in front of me and said, which one's going to say the Second Amendment doesn't exist in her courtroom, I wouldn't be surprised to see that this is the judge who declared that. He figured out that you can build firearms at home. He's not a prohibited person. He's not a felon. And so he started building these guns. And what ended up happening is the FBI, ATF, started investigating him because he was purchasing a lot of gun parts online, something that is completely legal. And the federal government suspected that he was trafficking in firearms. So they opened up a whole investigation to see why on earth he was buying so many upper receivers, so many pistol parts. Yep.
But he's
And
just a hobbyist.
yep, yep. So the federal investigation turned up nothing. He wasn't selling guns, but that ended up being enough for New York to throw the book at him. And I believe at its height, he was facing 37 counts.
Or was this
Yes.
a high
Yes.
misdemeanor? Oh my God,
Telling
that's a life
because
sentence.
he made handguns. And remember, he's not a prohibited person. He's not
Yeah,
a felon.
yeah.
He's not a wife beater. He's not an illegal alien. He's not
Red-blooded
dishonorably
American
discharged. Yep.
taxpayer. Yeah,
His
normal
problem
guy.
was that he made handguns without getting a handgun permit in New York. He made AR-15s, which you're not allowed to do in New York. That's super duper illegal. I'm gonna see if I can find the. Let's see if I can find.
Where's Joe? Where's the part? I mean, these are all state charges, right? So, I mean, you can't pardon him. But where's the governor pardoning for these kind of things? This man is not dangerous. He's not creating weapons for other people.
No.
This is beyond egregious at this point. How do you recognize the authority of the state of New York when they clearly go after you? Oh,
Yeah, that's the issue. I want to see if I can find it.
the stuff
I'm gonna look under the phrase that the media used, arsenal. They called it an arsenal.
It's like the mountain of evidence they have against Trump right now in the in the case. Like it just doesn't.
Ghost gun bust reveals arsenal at New York. Oh, they don't have the picture.
What, 4 or more guns? I mean, who?
Here we go.
That's his arsenal.
Listen. I've heard them call things arsenals before. This is much closer than what I've seen called an arsenal when they had a BB gun and a wrist rocket. So he made these AR-15s. He made these handguns.
That's incredible.
Made these handguns. It looks like, I don't know about this part, this stock. I haven't seen that before.
That's a Hera Arms.
So that's a legitimate stock. Okay.
Yeah, you bet.
So I don't know if he 3D printed anything here. It looks like some of these components might be 3D printed, but I believe he did 3D print stuff for the handguns, and he used polymer 80s. That was his crime. So
this is not an arsenal to some. This is a small collection.
Yeah.
I know people with collections that would boggle one's minds, right?
Yes.
Wow. Where'd they get off calling it and using those kind of words? What the?
So his argument is that he has a legal. He tried to make this argument. The judge wouldn't let him do it. The judge blocked his attorney from making the argument in court.
How do you do that? How?
The judge tried to go down a jury nullification route, and the rule in New York is that judges can't encourage it. The judge refused to let him present that argument to the jury.
Why?
And and said that he can't make the argument that the Second Amendment. This is the quote that she said. I'll put up on the screen. Do not bring the Second Amendment into this courtroom. It doesn't exist here, so you can't argue the Second Amendment. This is New York.
That right there should be reason for her to be removed completely from the bench. This is not a judge trying to uphold the state of New York in the United States. This is fascist tyranny here. This is worse than a king telling you what you can and can't put in your body, when you can and cannot vote, whether we have representation, how much you're being taxed.
As long as the argument is salient to what you're being charged with, you always have the right to argue that you had a right to do it, right? I mean, what's the point of having a constitutional right if you're not allowed to make a rights-based argument in court? It's not a right if you're not allowed to use it to defend yourself. But that's the existence, that's the reality here in New York. And so, like, here's the problem. So they're charging with all these crimes, right? Their argument is, if you wanted to own a gun, you should have just gotten a pistol permit. You should have just gotten a gun permit. You should have just gone through that process. Well, because they're saying you can't build a gun at home. You have to buy guns through regulated commerce. That's their argument. The problem is that since the Supreme Court ruled that New York's gun permit scheme was unconstitutional, right? New York has actually been approving.
Shocking. How'd they pull that off?
Wrap your head around this. Fewer gun permits. So back in the day, when you wanted to apply, it was next to impossible to get a carry permit, right?
Yeah. You had to know somebody.
The only people who applied were the ones who had a reasonable expectation they could get it, right? Because what's the point of paying all this money if you know that unless you're sleeping with a judge, you're not going to get it? So back in the day, I believe it was about a 50% approval rate for carry permits.
Wow.
And in New York City, if there was 5,000 permits applications, maybe 2,500 would be approved in a given year. After the Supreme Court stepped in and said, you can't do this, you're violating your citizens' rights, they got 7,000 permit applications in the next few months. And of those, only 1,000 were approved. So they're approving, they're getting more permit applications, but they're approving fewer. Like right here in 2022, increased number 7,200. They only approved 1,500 of them. So Dexter Taylor's argument is, you're throwing me in prison for building my own gun, but if I go through the process and I approve for the right to buy one, you're just going to ignore me.
Yeah.
So how do I have a right to keep and bear arms if you're deliberately slow walking the legal way and throwing anyone in prison who dares build it themselves?
Wow.
That's his argument. Now that's not gonna fix the fact that he had AR-15s in New York. You can't have that. He has to make a different argument for that. But as far as the handguns are concerned, if he's legally allowed to purchase a handgun, you should be legally allowed to build a handgun.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a problem with that. What New York wants is they want you to go through the registration process so that they know where the guns are. Yeah. So that if they want to take the guns away from you, they know what door to kick down.
Yeah.
The minute you build them yourself and you don't register them, they lose the ability to keep track of that. That's the ultimate gun grabber's dream, door-to-door confiscation. That's why they're so afraid of DIY guns. DIY guns have existed forever, right? And they will continue to exist. No matter what they do, you can still hand me, I think at this point it's $30. $30, and I can walk you into a Home Depot plumbing section and come out with the parts you need to make a single-shot shotgun.
Yep.
Not going to give anyone else any ideas, but some of those pipes are the perfect diameter for a shotgun shell. And that's just, it's always going to be that. It's always going to be that way. So they're never going to be able to legislate away the felon class from arming themselves or stealing weapons, right?
Right.
This is only about going after law-abiding citizens. And this isn't the only one that was dealing with. This isn't the only case in New York that really is shocking. There's another case in New York dealing with stun guns. And stun guns, you would think that if the left says that you can't own this gun, it's too deadly, you would think they would have no problem with you owning a stun gun. Because
a less lethal weapon,
a less lethal weapon. Like, if I can't own a gun, then surely we can all agree on this. Nope. Wrong. Not at all. New York State is arguing in court that the Second Amendment doesn't apply to stun guns. And this is actually the argument that they put forward in court. I'll read it. Nor have plaintiffs presented any evidence that stun guns and tasers are commonly used for self-defense. In Heller and Bruin, the Supreme Court recognized handguns as the quintessential weapon of choice for purposes of self-defense. As such, the court found no question as to whether handguns are in common use today. The same cannot be said of stun guns and tasers. While stun guns and tasers may be commonly used by law enforcement as less lethal means by which to subdue criminals, there is no evidence that civilians use stun guns and tasers for purposes of self-defense, especially not in any significant number. Following Bruin, it is now clear that self-defense in the event of a confrontation lies at the heart of the Second Amendment. Accordingly, it logically follows that the type of weapons protected under the Second Amendment must be those that are used for purposes of self-defense.
Well, at least you can carry around body armor in New York. I mean, at least you'll have that, right? Unless they banned that. Did they ban that?
It is crazy because, like, they're the home security superstore. Self-defense, where you just buy tasers and these little Byrna. I have one of these Byrnas still. I just found my Byrna the other day from when they did an ad read for Conservative Daily. I've seen the evidence is overwhelming. that people use these for self-defense. Go into a gun show and you can't make it 5 feet without hearing zzz, 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 the carnival barker saying, come here, get your tasers, get your stun guns. Every state in the country allows you to own a stun gun. When New York says there's no evidence that it's commonly used for self-defense, what they're saying is we've always banned them, so you can't find a New Yorker legally using one for self-defense.
That's just total bullshit. It's very clear, shall not infringe the right to bear arms. It didn't say just guns or swords or knives or cannons or anything. It says arms.
Yeah.
So if you want to use a less lethal arm to do it, you are more than in the right to do so.
Yeah.
But, apparently that's too dangerous. We can't trust people with guns that are, and some of those guns, those less lethals are medium effective. There's no guarantee that it's going to work. There's no guarantee a gun actually protects you unless you know what you're doing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is why I highly recommend training. But, Max, this is... What do they want? Just a populace of thugs and evil creatures running around with guns in the state of New York, mobbing people on subway stations and the streets? I mean,
it's funny. Like, the left loves to use, like, Hollywood as the example of what's common, right? So they have the Hollywood trope of the guy with the machine gun, right? Yeah. But one of the other most common tropes is the woman walking alone at night. The mugger tries to attack her and she uses a stun gun on him. Yeah. And that's been in movies forever. Not saying that that's like the measurement we should use, right? But it is crazy that they can't see that this is in common use, especially because the Supreme Court looked at this, examined this very issue in 2016. I outline it in my book, but it's Caetano v. Massachusetts. The Supreme Court in Massachusetts had ruled that the Second Amendment doesn't apply to tasers or stun guns. And the United States Supreme Court unanimously shot them down. Wow. The Massachusetts court offered 3 explanations to support its holding. First, the court explained that stun guns were not protected because they, quote, were not in common use at the time of the Second Amendment's enactment. This is inconsistent with Heller's clear statement that the Second Amendment extends to arms that were not in existence at the time of the founding.
Perfect. It's clear.
That should be the full stop. A stun gun is an arm. Yes. Supreme Court of the United States 9-0, Josh.
Which is crazy.
Ruled that the Second Amendment protects stun guns. Then they said the court was asked to ask whether stun guns were dangerous per se at common law and unusual in an attempt to apply one important limitation on the right to keep and carry arms. In doing so, the court concluded that stun guns are unusual because they are a thoroughly modern invention. By equating unusual within common use at the time of the Second Amendment's enactment, the court's second explanation is the same as the first. It is inconsistent with Heller for the same reason. Finally, the court used a contemporary lens and found nothing in the record to suggest that stun guns are readily adaptable to use in the military, but Heller rejects that proposition, that only those weapons useful in warfare are protected. So New York is arguing in court that the Supreme Court got it wrong. They're saying that the step one that the Supreme Court said it is protected, it isn't. Second, two, when the Supreme Court said that it is in common use, New York's saying it's not. And when the Supreme Court says it doesn't matter if the military or police or anyone uses it, New York is saying it shouldn't be legal for civilians because only the police use them.
Well, your rights be damned.
Your rights be damned. It's ridiculous.
I mean, what happens when we, I always say this, what happens in 100 years from now when we're looking at arms? They're all energy-based weapons, right? They try to ban those, right? The evolution of weapons has been going on since our country was founded. I mean, you look at the 20s, people would carry what they call slapjacks in their pockets. That way, if you got into a fight, you could slap somebody with, a roll of quarters or something, right? People had pocket pistols. They had everything from brass knuckles. I mean, arms are an all-encompassing thing. And if you're not being a jerk with them and you're using it to protect yourself, then how can the government tell you that you can't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it starts with a little bit of stuff. They get rid of the blackjacks, right? They get rid of the brass knuckles and they get rid of the knives and there's no more pocket pistols. And you got too many rounds in the pistol. Then we can't have pistols at all. Then we can't have features on a gun, right? Then we can't have
Guns
magazines of a certain
are too
size.
deadly.
Yeah,
Have stun guns because they're not deadly enough.
No.
It's there's no Goldilocks. There's no sweet spot. Everything's bad.
So it's be damned with your rights, and that's what they're saying, right? They're at what point can the local New Yorkers stand up and exercise their rights without fear of going to jail? I mean, that guy had what, 30 counts of felonies for
37. Yeah.
37. And he probably got,
I don't know if they were all felonies, but they had 37 counts on him.
37 counts, right? He got a count for each and everything that was probably in a box. And, this guy's just a normal American. What happens when they start going after our free speech then, right? Your right to say that you can't take away my guns, right? The right to them just going through your phone like we've shown on this show, right? Yeah. How many times have we gone through these things on our show showing you how every right you've ever had is being completely burned up? The Constitution is just, it's turned into a doorstop for the Democrats and the liberals out there, right? They care nothing for it.
Let me present it like this. This guy, Dexter Taylor, was raided because the feds and New York City found that he had too many gun parts being sent to his house. That right there, but that right there, because what they've done is they've sued Polymer 80, they've sued all these companies, and the companies, in an attempt to just kind of be done with it, have settlements where they agree to hand over their client list. So that New York City sees the client list and is able to get a warrant on that basis. But this should have been tossed out as there being no probable cause for the search warrant. If you have a right to keep and bear arms, you have a right to buy gun parts. Period.
Yeah.
And if there has never been any evidence to suggest that he was selling guns, he was trafficking guns. They don't have him on tape selling them on the street or pulling into an alley with a van and offloading crates full. They had a lot of logical leaps. And you ask yourself, it's possible for you to do a lot of damage with your free speech, right? They always say, oh, your free speech is not unlimited. Imagine having your home raided because the government said you bought too many dictionaries and thesauruses. Yeah. And that's too dangerous. You could learn too many of those words.
Yeah, because words are dangerous.
Yeah. Or maybe you bought too many Bibles. And therefore you were going to potentially exercise that First Amendment a little bit too harshly, too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apply this logic to any of your other rights. And this case would have been tossed out immediately. But it wasn't, because the judge declared that the Second Amendment doesn't exist in her courtroom. It's really easy to convict someone of exercising their rights when the judge declares you have no rights.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels like a kangaroo court there. I mean, if none of you, and if one right doesn't apply in that courtroom, what about all the others? And has she done this to anyone else? I would want a full review of every case that she's ever gone through, because if she's suppressed anyone's rights in any way, that it must be thrown out and retried, or at least I say something's got to happen next. I mean, how much more of this is going to happen in the state of New York? And it's spreading to your states. Don't think that won't happen to you because I live in Colorado, because it will. Don't think that won't happen to you because I live in California or Nevada or Illinois or New Jersey. Pick a coast, the Carolinas, right? Once it starts creeping in, they start coming after everything. And then you become too scared to say or do anything about it, right? Because they might be watching how many times you order something from Amazon. Oh, you get a lot of tactical gear stuff, huh?
Yeah.
What are you doing with that? Just like the pouches? Are those pouches holding something?
Yeah. Oh, you got a lot of bullets. Maybe you own more guns than we know you own.
Yeah. You're doing some reloading, huh? Shooting a lot of bullets too?
Yeah. 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 This should all be really easy to settle, because when the Supreme Court issued its decision in Bruin, it gave up the whole idea of the government can restrict the Second Amendment through interest balancing, basically saying it's more important to stop mass shootings than it is to protect you and your family. The Supreme Court says, not allowed to do that. Not allowed to have difficult empirical judgments about the costs and benefits of firearms restrictions. No, they said you can't do that. You can't do that at all. And instead, they settled on this. They settled on this test They said we are declining to adopt that interest balancing approach. In keeping with Heller, we hold that when the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. To justify its regulation, the government may not simply posit that the regulation promotes an important interest. Rather, the government must demonstrate that the regulation is consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Only if a firearm regulation is consistent with this nation's historical tradition may a court conclude that the individual's conduct falls outside the Second Amendment's unqualified command. The burden of proof falls on the government to prove that the regulation is consistent. So in a case like this, where we know that every generation of Americans that has ever existed has had a right to build their own firearm at the federal level, and it's only been recently that states have decided not to let you do that, this should be a pretty easy case.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I have the right to build a firearm. This regulation is inconsistent with the nation's, not New York's, the nation's tradition of allowing people to build firearms for their own defense. And that's especially bolstered by the fact that when people try to buy guns through commerce, NYPD is not approving their permits, even though they're allowed, right? That should be an easy answer. But again, you're never going to get anywhere when the judge says the Second Amendment doesn't exist in my courtroom.
Every time you say it, it just causes the fire to start growing inside, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, those are famous last words that people hear before their country completely evaporates, right? Yeah. And imagine this war on guns. I mean, when does it really start happening? You know, I want to say 68. Remember when or was that 63 when they had that real ban? It was 68, I thought, right? I mean, that starts to be the start of it. And that's the days that they started picking away. It's chipping away at it. But, you know, a little bit before then. But what decade have we not gone by where things have just gotten worse for the gun owner? Yeah. Right? Over it being a right, right? And you can't tell me government doesn't have a hand in it. They love suppressing rights. We've seen it since COVID, right? And it's ramped up like crazy now since then. I mean, if COVID doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what the government's willing to do to your rights, then I don't know what else to tell you. Right?
We talk. I just read that part where the Supreme Court said you can't interest balance away the Second Amendment. You can't say that the government's allowed to restrict it because it would be dangerous if they didn't. Right. So you just mentioned the Gun Control Act of 1968. That was in response in large part to the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
I remember. Oh my gosh.
Lee Harvey Oswald, according to the records, depending on how much you trust the records, he bought his Carcano rifle through the mail.
Yeah. Which was the norm.
Yes. Which is not a very good rifle for assassinating people. There's no good rifle for assassinating people, but the Carcano rifle, every person I've ever seen tried to repeat what the official story says, can't get that many shots off at accuracy at that distance. It's not the right rifle to try and do it. It was a cheap rifle, but whatever.
Yeah.
So if the Supreme Court says you can't restrict the Second Amendment because you're afraid it'll be dangerous if you don't, then how does the Gun Control Act of 1968 survive when it was in response to a high-profile killing of one person? And the government saying you shouldn't be allowed to own guns, buy guns by mail. It's too dangerous to let you do that. Well, the historical tradition in this country is that you always have been allowed to buy guns by mail. The Wells Fargo wagon is a coming, and what's it bringing to your town or your city? It's bringing a boatload of firearms, right?
Yeah,
a carriage full of firearms. The Sears Roebuck catalog. So I can't show them on screen because YouTube will take us down, but I've got a couple of Sears Roebuck guns floating around here that I bought for like $25 at a gun show.
Yeah.
I would never use them, but I have them. It's in the nation's tradition of buying guns through a catalog.
Yeah. At your old hardware store.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it wasn't the change until, what was it, 68? Where that stuff starts to happen. And people thought it was okay. It was that little bit meet us halfway on it. How many times they
Yeah.
used to say that in the past? Just meet us halfway on some of this legislation. That way we can get some real safe gun control measures started. Common sense stuff.
Yeah.
When you hear those buzzwords, guys, there's no such thing as meeting halfway anymore. There's no such thing as real comprehensive gun control. It's all we have to take the reins away from government on this stuff and exercise our rights just about everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
I love saying this because, one, it's mathematically true. But if you meet someone halfway repeatedly 5 times in a row, they get 97% of what they want. If every time you give up half, then you give up half, then you give up half of what's left, give up half of what's left of that, at the end of the day, you've given up almost 97, just shy of 97%. Ray says that Lee Harvey Oswald, yes, Lee Harvey Oswald was in 1963. The bill was 1968 that responded to it.
Which took 5 years of legislation. It was a tough battle in itself. But how does that stand now? How does that survive based on Heller? How does the 35 ban, when they pretty much got rid of fully automatic weapons? How does that continue to stand? Because it was within the history of the nation that fully automatic weapons were the norm. You used to be able to buy the Thompson Center, the Tommy gun, right, in mail order catalogs because it was really good for the ranch. I mean, that was its selling point. That's why it was created.
Yeah. Josh, it's even worse than that.
How so?
I didn't throw up on screen, but I'll throw up on screen. My book, Conservatives Guide to Winning Every Gun Control Argument. I tell the story of the National Firearms Act, and the Supreme Court never heard the defense side. So it was a guy who was arrested for a sawed-off shotgun. His lawyer never went to the Supreme Court. Couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford the travel. He died. The defendant actually died. So it should have made the whole thing moot. And we should have had another bite at the apple. The only thing that only people the Supreme Court heard from was the government. The government said there's no military purpose for having a sawed-off shotgun, while the government was actively deploying troops with sawed-off shotguns. So the whole thing was bogus. It was ex parte. The other side wasn't there. It never should have been ruled on because he was dead. It should have been a moot point. And the government lied, openly lied. And what that led to, with what they actually had to try and fix, what the Gun Control Act of 1968 ended up fixing, was when the U.S. deployed in World War II with M1 carbines. The original NFA said you couldn't have a rifle with a barrel shorter than 18 inches. So when they deployed with the M1 carbine, that was like 16 and a half, 16 and a quarter.
Yeah.
So what did the government do after World War II? They said, we got all these M1 carbines. Let's sell them to the American people. They sold them to the American people. Literally shipped them to people's door.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you used to be able to get discount 1911s at a hardware store after the war.
So the government saved the NFA, National Firearms Act, by arguing there was no military purpose to have a rifle or a shotgun with less than 18 inches. Went to war with a rifle less than 18 inches. Then actively encouraged American citizens to illegally purchase them through the mail.
Wow.
And had to retroactively replace that provision, which is why today it's 16 inches. The only reason it's 16 inches today is because they accidentally sold millions of M1 carbines to Americans and turned millions of Americans into felons. That's why it got lowered to 16. It's an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
Completely arbitrary number.
And it was so dangerous selling that back to the civilians that, obviously crime was rampant. Oh, I guess it wasn't. I guess all that gun violence was rampant, which it wasn't, right? I mean, it's just all a bunch of horseshit.
Yeah. There's no mass shootings are happening with 30 carbine.
No.
30 carbine is the last round you would want to go into any type of real defensive or offensive situation.
On round, but underpowered.
There are anecdotal stories, and I don't know how much I believe them, but there are anecdotal stories from during the Korean War that North Korean soldiers, were so cold during the winter that they wore so many layers that had so much ice and snow built up that when they would get hit with an M1 carbine, they didn't go down. Now, if people have tested this and said like, no, it goes through a million coats. But that's the anecdotal story that U.S. soldiers, UN soldiers were shooting the North Koreans with 30 carbines, hitting them in the chest, and they were still running at them.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've ever been in war, you know that anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
And it was an underpowered round, right? It was a bad choice to go to war with. But when it came home, it was super popular because it was a great carbine rifle. It's easy to shoot. You could hunt with it, right? I mean, that's
I got one.
the point of it. I want one, right? But where is this distinction that the government's starting to draw whether a weapon is a weapon of war or not? Like, how can that claim be made? Because any weapon that you use in a war theater becomes a weapon of war. Muskets are weapons of war by that reasoning, right? And right now, that seems to be the catch-all word that they want to apply is like weapons of war. War, they're tying them to these legislations, trying to go after guns that have high capacity or a certain type of round, and they try to label like they're creating this new label there. They're trying to smear with everything as a weapon of war. So 9mm, right? Weapon of war because it was designed by the Germans for the Luger, a weapon of war. The 357 Magnum, I guess you can keep because it was a civilian round, but we all know it's the same bullet in 357 and 9mm. The case is just longer, right? So you can't make any distinction like that. Calling something a weapon of war is just it's an unfair untruth, right? That they're just trying to apply to gun owners. And so they can start using this language that sounds scary, that gets people on board, that gets legislation passed. And I'm sick of it. Like all the definitions they're using, like the definition of mass shooting is now like 2 or 3 people. And there's all these mass shootings all over now. There's gang activity. There's a lot of violent activity.
They include the shooter.
Yeah.
So some people just say a mass shooting is when 2 people are shot. So if one person shoots another person and then they get shot by police, that's a mass shooting. I mean, it's ridiculous. There was one case in the actual database of mass shootings where someone shot a BB gun at a school bus. And because of that, they declared that was a school shooting.
And it just comes in as a data point, right? And they use it all over. Yeah. Look at all these school shootings. Look at all these mass shootings now.
Yeah. They don't expect you to look into the details of it.
They don't want you to.
No.
That's where the power is.
Well, let's look into the details of what they're trying to do in your lovely Colorado.
This is Colorado. Fun. Which one is this one?
This is the bill. This is
HB 24-1292
concerning prohibitions on certain firearms used in public mass shootings. Josh, do you know what gun is most commonly used in so-called mass shootings?
22.
They're just handguns.
Just handguns. Okay, I was gonna say
just handguns.
I would say like a 22 handgun, like that would be the one that everybody got. You know, the old school deuce, right? Got to have my deuce before the war. The 90s, everybody like a deuce. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just handguns. So a little strange to see legislation talking about rifles and shotguns. So yeah, it's very interesting. Let's look and see who it doesn't apply to. It doesn't apply to members of the military.
No.
Any branch of the armed services. If you're going to repair them for someone, you can, as long as they're allowed to own it. Historical Society, a forensic lab, armored vehicle business, a licensed gun dealer, as long as it's pre-inventory. But it's inventory as of August 1st of this year. So they're planning on pushing this through.
Oh yeah, they've got the dates in. It's just formalities now.
But you can only then sell it to a non-Colorado resident or a peace officer. So let's look at what these are going to look like. Interestingly, this bill doesn't include the M1 carbine. When you look at New Jersey does if you put it in a different stock.
Unreal.
Say assault weapons are disproportionately used in public mass shootings. That's just not true. Handguns, as I said, are the most commonly used weapon in all shootings.
So on the face, it's already dishonest. So
yes,
way to go, Colorado.
Yes. They entail tactical features designed for warfare. No, whoa, 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 whoa,
Oh,
whoa, whoa. We just talked about Caetano. Remember Caetano?
yeah.
Remember
Uh,
talking about how it doesn't matter if it was used in the military, how that's not the issue, how
yeah.
Heller said it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the military. Very strange to see that they're now making this argument. GH says, well, guess that's why we have an appellate system. No, the appellate system exists to, oh, well, yeah, I mean, thank God we have an appellate system. But when you look at these cases that are coming down, we'd much rather have competent lower court judges, right? Like having an
Mhm,
appellate
mhm.
system isn't a solution to the fact that we have a judge who says the Second Amendment doesn't exist. Like the appellate court is there to deal with higher questions, not something that's supposed to be settled law. So no tactical features. They're
What does
not
that
really
even
cosmetic.
mean?
They're not mad. They're not minor.
Is
They
it-
allow shooter to better conceal weapons, making it easier to fire high volume of ammo while maintaining accuracy. I thought that would be something safe. Maximizing catastrophic injury and providing
how-
ease of use for less than expert users. Whew. This is weird because the right to keep and bear arms exists for all Americans,
Oh,
not
people's.
just expert users.
Yeah.
And any gun that allows a non expert to safely and accurately fire the weapon should be applauded.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Especially someone who, say, has to use an arm brace because they're in a wheelchair or they've only got one arm.
Yeah.
I
The,
mean, wow.
the General Assembly of Colorado finds that assault weapons are not suitable for self defense and are not well suited for hunting, sporting, or any purpose other than mass killing. So here's the
Wow.
question.
Whoa.
Here's the question. Why are police officers exempted?
Yeah.
If you say that the only reason to have an assault weapon is mass killing, why should the local police have it? In what world
Mhm.
will the local police need to engage in mass killing? Because we just went through this.
Mhm.
We just went through the exemptions right here. The prohibition does not apply to a peace officer. So it doesn't apply to like the postal inspector, doesn't apply to wildlife, fish and game. The definition or other government officer or agent. My God,
Yeah.
that
That could be
really
IRS.
expands it. Yeah.
Right? I mean, what happens with the IRS is armed and coming after us, and they get an exemption for it, even though they have no authority to do that. I don't know what to do with that. Wow.
Yeah. It is they won't answer the question. If the only reason to have an assault weapon is to kill as many people as possible, why would a local historical society need one? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is where their logic completely falls apart. They've said it's just for killing as many people as possible, but that's why the police need to have them.
Yeah. And that second paragraph um, that you were getting to was also right because it starts going into the masculinity of those sort of the
Oh,
weapons.
where's that? Where's that?
Oh, it was
Oh,
the
here we go.
yeah, the next one. Yeah.
Here we go. The firearms industry has specifically marketed assault weapons as tactical, hyper masculine, and military style in manner that overtly appeals to the very people most likely to acquire such weapons as a means to gain infamy as a mass shooter. So,
I've never seen that sort of marketing. Have you?
well, I mean, like the soldier of fortune type, sure, but how do you explain the large number of transgender mass shooters that we've seen in the last year or two?
Hmm.
A sharp spike, far more than we've ever experienced in this country before.
Yeah.
It basically what they're saying is this is a cisgender male problem. And if only we stop them from owning the cool, manly guns, then we'll all be safe.
Interesting. Interesting. Oh, this is just getting better too. This is just getting better.
Oh,
At
GH is
least,
back. I love when GH comes.
yeah.
They want our guns run. No, quite literally, we're going through a bill to ban guns. We just went through a case where a man was told in court he can't bring forward the Second Amendment as a defense. This is real. This is very much real, and it's sad that GH, if that is your real name, GH doesn't seem to even so much as care about this. But GH really strikes me as an ends justify the means kind of guy. But don't worry, when someone breaks into his house, he can call all of those hyper masculine police officers with their weapons of mass killing to come protect him. Because that's also the big thing about this, right? By giving police officers these guns and saying you can have these mass killing machines, you've recognized, and I'm not talking GH, I'm talking just generally, they've recognized that when crimes occur, we want responders to have these weapons of mass killing, which seems to suggest that they recognize that there could be crimes of multiple assailants, right?
Mm-hmm.
If every crime was only going to have one criminal, then yeah, police officers could roll up with bolt action rifles and probably do a good job. Saying that the police officers need to have weapons of war that can kill, they're only designed to kill as many people as possible. And then saying, don't worry, when someone comes to kill you, call these people to help you. It's just, it's stupid. It's dumb. But these are the other side. They are more than comfortable with the government having a monopoly on the use of force, which used to be called fascism, but no, not anymore.
But they did find that illegal aliens have a right to protect themselves with firearms, but these people of Colorado do not. So I'll be interested to see how that shakes out if they catch a bunch of people in downtown Denver who are armed to the teeth, who aren't from this country. We'll see what happens. That banning of assault weapons leads to a drop in mass shootings.
Leads to a drop in mass shootings. That's not true. That's actually factually incorrect. But they're just going to lie. They're just going to make shit up.
Yeah. I mean, this is the same garbage over and over. We've seen this song. We've seen the way this movie plays out in California. You know what I mean? We already know where this is going. This is just a matter of they're just going through the motions at this point. They know they're going to ban this stuff. The 50 caliber rifle, they're going to get rid of the 50 cal.
Yeah.
Where did they get off just starting to pick and choose winners and losers based on size? So what about a slug and a shotgun?
Yeah.
That's technically a half inch in size, which would mean that my shotgun is illegal, including a shotgun that has a rifled barrel. It says it right there. And includes any antique firearm. Oh my gosh.
Revolutionary War, one of the common sizes of bullets was 0.693 inches. Good Lord. So that would be that'd be 69.
That's pretty big.
Caliber. That's big. That's very big. And it's interesting that they say it doesn't include any antique firearm. So according to Bruin, in order for this one section to be constitutional, the legislature of Colorado needs to show and prove that it's consistent with the nation's history of firearm regulation for them to ban any caliber gun over 50 caliber. But in the very sentence that they attempt to do so, they say it doesn't apply to any of the antique firearms and stuff you've always been allowed to own. Right? If the section says this ban doesn't apply to antique firearms, you have not proven that your ban is within the nation's history of regulating firearms. Yeah. If I can pull an antique off the wall and it would violate your ban unless given an exemption, your ban is not consistent with the nation's highest tradition of firearm regulation.
Right. Yeah, the antiques are the proof of the pudding. You guys just might want to pay attention to that. And I love how they want to like label us as these weird kooks that think everybody's coming out to get it. But they are coming out to get it, and they've been coming out to get it. And when the weirdos show up and they tell us that we're paranoid about it,
Yeah.
well, I'm not. It's happening. You're living in a fantasy world if you don't think people are taking our rights away every moment.
Yeah. That the ban on 50 caliber weapons will not apply to those used for historical reenactments.
Oh, thank God.
But that proves that this ban is not within the nation's tradition of firearm regulation. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
It's farcical. But this is, this is going through the Senate here right now.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're reading that one too. I always like it when the weird ones
So, assault weapon, except as provided in subsection 2B of the section, means a semi-automatic rifle that has the capacity to accept a detachable magazine, or that may be readily modified to accept a detachable magazine.
Holy crap.
And has one or more of the following characteristics: a pistol grip or thumbhole stock. Any feature capable of functioning as a protruding grip that can be held by the non-trigger hand. That is incredibly unconstitutionally vague. Anything can be a grip, right?
Yeah. There's some people who can't hold normal grips because of arthritis.
Yeah. A folding or telescoping or detachable stock that is otherwise foldable or adjustable in a manner that operates to reduce the length, size, or any other dimension, or otherwise enhances the ability to conceal the weapon. A muzzle brake.
Whoa.
So you can't have that. You can't have accurate shots.
Yeah.
You can't have shots
good recoil.
Intending, like, you can't hit what you intend to hit. A functional grenade launcher or flare launcher. That's strange. Flare launchers aren't illegal, but they want to make it a felony to put one on your rifle. Unless you're the cops. You can shoot grenades at people if you're the cops.
Yeah, but you can't if you're anybody else.
A shroud. A shroud attached to the barrel, or that partially or completely encircles the barrel, allowing the bearer to hold the firearm with the non-trigger hand without being burned, but excluding a slide that encloses the barrel. Now, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. So
they're doing that on purpose.
Yeah. Pick up any World War II rifle, and you'll see that they have barrel shrouds. All that means is that there is a piece of wood covering the barrel the full length so you can hold it. So they're saying you can't have a grip. You can't have a grip that allows you to hold it with a second hand, and you can't have anything blocking your hand from being burned by a barrel. I haven't seen a gun without that kind of protection like in a long time. Maybe, I mean, like you think about one
that like are for safety. I mean, it just keeps you from burning yourself, especially in a lot of shotguns that you might get like a semi-auto.
Yeah.
But how does that have to do with its lethality, or is it because it looks cool and masculine? And by masculine,
I'm thinking like maybe like a Henry rifle. I'm trying to think the last time that a gun was like specifically designed to not have that. The Henry rifle comes to mind. Everything else has that in some way, shape, or form. No.
Yeah. Wow.
Can't have a threaded barrel. So even if you legally own a suppressor, even though this doesn't ban suppressors, even though the government has said you have the right to a suppressor, but you have to jump through extra hoops to exercise it, what Colorado says is you don't have the right to fire a semi-automatic weapon through that suppressor.
That's going to make every person in Colorado a criminal overnight.
Yep.
That's all it's designed to do.
They don't stop there, though.
All of the
following rifles, copies, duplicates, variants, or altered facsimiles with the capability of any such weapon. That is unconstitutionally vague. That's not how it used to be. The ban used to say all the following rifles, copies, duplicates, variants. This says with the capability of such weapon. How do you possibly know if you're complying with the law when someone can subjectively say, oh, well, your gun's actually banned because even though it isn't an AK, it has the capability of an AK. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Like, because it takes a magazine, or is it the? Well, it's a gas and pinch system. So does that
Yeah.
mean any rifle that's gas and pinch at this point? And they've
I'm
named some of
shocked.
these.
I'm shocked that they've even bothered with this because this is redundant. When they say any semi-automatic weapon that's capable of accepting a detachable magazine, this covers it, right? But they just want to make sure you can't have a compliant gun. All this section does, Josh, is make it a felony to put the letters AK on the side of a gun. All these words, AK-47, AK-47S, AK-74, AKM, all that means is you can't stamp the gun with that name.
Yeah, you'd have to keep it off there. But are they going to go further? Because what if the guns that are like a hybrid between an AR-15 and an AK-47, and they share similar features because of the way?
Yep.
I mean, you would be able to make the claim that any one of those rifles would be illegal.
Yep. I guarantee you the Galil is on here.
Oh, it has to be. Like the Galil is the first one that comes to mind. There's Uzi. I mean, I'm just seeing the names popping up there.
Yeah, Galil right here. Galil, for anyone who doesn't know, is the Israeli military's attempt to basically put an AR-15 AK-47 in a gun safe and have them have a baby. Yeah. Like that scene from It's a Wonderful Life. Oh, we got $2. Let's put them in the safe and hope they make a baby. That's basically what the Israeli military did with the Galil. Took the best, the Hannah Montana. They got the best of both worlds.
This is every gun that you could go and find at a gun store right now.
Yeah.
This is everything.
All this means is you can't have these words stamped on the side of the gun. Josh,
what happens if I remove those words? Am I committing a new crime?
Well, they're trying to say that if it has, they want to basically say it's a facsimile. But everywhere they've tried to do that, the courts have said that's unconstitutionally vague. You can't put it on the civilian to know what a facsimile is. It's either banned or it isn't, which is the whole reason they have this feature test system, right? This is what's supposed to define the facsimile. Josh, would you believe me if I told you that in states where there were early adopters of this bill, guns were banned that weren't AR-15s simply because they had the letter AR in them?
Yeah, like an Armalite rifle.
Yes. When you ban AR and you say all AR types, you are basically putting the Armalite rifle company out of business. Because every gun, AR doesn't mean assault rifle. AR stands for Armalite rifle.
Yeah.
Model 15.
Yeah. Max, and look, these are all some of the best names that you can get in AR. I mean, you would have to make your own gun at this point.
Yeah.
Because you'd never be able to buy anything again.
This is an AR-7. This is currently made by the Henry Rifle Repeating Arms Co. This, for the longest time, was the survival weapon of choice for the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
If a pilot went down, they had a different model of this that could easily fit in a little kind of case.
Yeah.
And it's a 22. Even though the Colorado bill has nothing to do with this at all, by saying any AR type, this would fall into it because it has the words AR stamped on the side of it. Crazy, right?
I will not be able to own a gun that wouldn't be illegal anymore. Everything that a person in this state possesses, every single gun you own, will be illegal. And that's not me trying to be crazy, hyperbolic, danger mongering. This is real. This is what they're listing in the law for you to read. And if you can't see that, then you're just a puppet of the fascist liberalism. And that's all you guys are, is a bunch of liberal fascists.
Last bit before we wrap up. Race guns are very popular for competition shooting. Race guns accept a detachable magazine, have a threaded barrel.
Usually.
usually, and often have a muzzle brake.
Yeah.
And because of that, every race gun in the state of Colorado that meets those categories would be declared an assault weapon. An assault weapon. So if you own a gun and you want to join this sport and you want to add your muzzle brake to your gun, even if you own the gun before the ban, there's a question of whether you could add the muzzle brake afterwards. But don't worry, Josh. This Colorado legislature has declared there is no sporting purpose whatsoever to put a muzzle brake on a pistol.
Bullshit.
They declared it. They declared it. They declared it. No, I'm just the messenger. I'm not one who supports the sporting purposes thing. I think that's always been unconstitutional. But they will not let you have a race gun because there's no sporting purpose, Josh. There's no reason for any competition shooter to have a muzzle brake ever.
What about
full stop?
Olympic shooters have used muzzle brakes. Even in their tiny little 22 shorts, they'll still have a muzzle brake. Because
the legislators know better. I don't know what to tell you.
Right now, Colorado legislators know two things: Jack and shit. And Jack left town.
Yeah. If you have a pistol that just has a buffer tube, that's banned.
My God.
Just the act of having a buffer tube.
It's the only way some rifles function.
Well, these are pistols. So they're basically saying you can't have any type of AR pistol at all. If you require any bit of extra space behind a gun for the actual buffer mechanism, banned. Unless you can keep it within the confines of the slide, super banned. Super duper banned, Josh.
I can't recognize. This is... Coloradans got to think long and hard about if they pass this, what they're going to do. You got to decide what you're going to do.
Yeah. It's very dumb. And none of this is written by anyone who has an understanding of this. GH says, funny how you literally ignore your only viewer. You just happen to be watching on YouTube. Congratulations. Yeah. This isn't written by people who have expertise in firearms or firearm law or firearm capabilities. This is written by people who say, hey, we want to ban as much as possible. What do we have to put onto the paper to ban as much as possible? Mm-hmm. When you look at that language, the copies, duplicates, facsimiles, that's designed just to ban as many guns as possible. Because you know what they hate the most, Josh? They hate that when these bills come out, people find a way to comply with them and still shoot their firearms. They call them loopholes, but it's really just compliance. So their goal is to just ban everything. I mean, literally, let's ban it all.
Ban everything. That's all this is. And we shouldn't be at the point where we're hoping this gets thrown out of court. It should never have been presented in the first freaking place.
No.
This is it's too much. Yeah. This is too much. I mean, you take everything from us. You tax us left and right. You tax us when we live and we die. Now you're taking away our fundamental rights. You're suppressing our speech. How do people not see that the time is now?
Yes. Here's before we leave, I want to call your attention to this one because this one is actually crazy. So we've gone through what an assault weapon is, that it's a semi-automatic rifle or shotgun or pistol in some cases with the ability to accept a detachable magazine and has one or more of those evil parts, right? Josh, are you surprised to learn that merely possessing one or more of the evil parts is also a felony?
Good God.
Section 13, Roman numeral XIII. Any part or combination of parts designed or intended to convert a firearm into an assault weapon as defined in subsection 2. So if you have a compliant, let's say you have a compliant gun. If you have a pistol grip in a drawer somewhere, that is technically designed or intended to convert your gun into an assault weapon. Let's say, okay, I don't have, my gun's legal, right? But maybe I have a muzzle brake in the corner. The law says it's only supposed to be an assault weapon when I put the muzzle brake on the gun.
Yeah.
So you take it off, you put a barrel nut, if you kept the muzzle brake. That's a part or combination of parts intended to convert a firearm into an assault weapon.
Everyone's going to be a criminal. Everyone already is a criminal. And no one will be able to fight this when they're busted for it. They won't have the money and the treasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
look at it this way. Imagine you jump through every hoop imaginable. You're like, okay, it's a semi-automatic rifle, but it doesn't accept a detachable magazine. So I'm gonna put a adjustable stock on it, right? Yeah. I'm gonna put a barrel shroud. I'm gonna put a muzzle brake, right? I'm gonna thread the barrel. Technically, because those parts or combination of parts could convert another firearm into an assault weapon, it doesn't matter that your gun is legal. The parts themselves would be illegal because the potential to add them to a gun, even if it's a gun you don't own, would be a felony.
Unreal. It's being accused of a crime that has never been committed by someone. It's like pre-crime. We think you're going to do this, so we're going to bust you now. It's all pre-crime.
Yep.
This isn't freedom anymore. I don't want to live in this state anymore. But again, this is my home state. I mean, you've got to fight for what you believe in. That's why James Woods hasn't left California, because you got to keep fighting for the state. But at this point, there's nothing left for me here, Max. There's just not. And by that, I mean by the law, family and all that. Yeah, but there's just nothing left for Colorado here. What happens when you take everything away from someone and they have nothing left to lose? You make the most dangerous people that exist out there. And that's what they're doing. And that's what they want.
Yeah.
So I'm just too pissed. I want to go start kicking in the bag. I'm pretty pissed. And I can't recognize these laws. The just laws sound true. They ring with truth and justice. This is not a just law. There's nothing right about this. All of you right now listening to this, everyone in Colorado will be a criminal. Because what happens if you live in a house and those parts exist and you just happen to be in the same house? Who's in possession of those parts?
We have to end the show, so I don't want to keep going, but
no, but look at all those people.
If you dare buy a trigger with maybe a little bit of a cleaner brake, maybe a little bit of a faster braking trigger, technically, the way this bill is written, that would be a rapid fire trigger activator, because even though that's like a bump stock, it's like a crank, Gatling crank, the way the law would define it, any manual, power-driven, or electronic device that is designed and functioned to increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic firearm. Technically, a trigger with a cleaner brake, with less pounds behind it, would allow you to fire it faster.
Yeah, just a clean reset. Yeah. That's all it has to be.
Yep. So, you have a non-stock trigger in your gun. Congratulations, you have purchased the equivalent of a machine gun. Congrats.
I can't do this anymore. I mean, I can't do this. This isn't freedom. I'm all up in arms and I'm angry and I'm just not saying things because the 3 letter agencies are always paying attention, right? If I try to talk out, they suppress me on social media, or maybe they just arrest me, right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening here, gang. And if you don't see it, I don't know what else to tell you. There's no way we can keep living like this. Everything we'll do will be a crime soon. I mean, flatulence will be a crime because of methane. You know?
It is fun to watch this GH guy in the comments go through the different stages of grief in real time.
Yeah.
Right? So like earlier in the show, he had denial, like this isn't real. Oh, they want our guns. Run. Now it's stop whining and move. He's already made it. I guess that's denial, anger, and bargaining. I guess that's bargaining.
Right.
Like if you don't like it, do this. He's made it 3 stages of grief. Next is depression, and I guess acceptance. That's all that we have left. So I do enjoy this. I do enjoy watching
tell
it.
all your friends about us.
Yeah, tell your friends.
Have them listen.
Tell your friends.
Have them listen. If they don't like it, have them listen. Have them share it with their friends. That way, everybody can hate us too. I don't care who you tell. Just tell everybody. So
tell everybody, and that goes for everyone. If you like the show, subscribe. No matter where you're watching us right now, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter, X. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check us out. We have the audio podcast available pretty much everywhere. Check out all those links. Really, really helpful links. And thank you for supporting the show, and appreciate it if you will share it far and wide. That's it for this edition. Josh, any comments? Last comments?
You don't live free. You don't. You don't. You're slaves. Welcome to it.
Josh is angry.
I'm pissed. There's things I want to say that aren't coming out right now because I really want to say some stuff.
I saw it click in your head, like, okay, I'd have to take my pistol grip off of my gun. Oh no, but if you kept the pistol grip, that's also a felony. Yeah, it's
magwell
to catch you.
Got to take a magwell off.
Yeah. Well, that's it, everyone. If you like the podcast, subscribe. We'll be back Wednesday. Remember, everyone, the fight to take back the country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together. See you next time.